Stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos and images. And the website for the latest news, views and analysis. WIONews.com. World is one.
Gravitas tells you stories which others won't. And tonight we will tell you about this new strategic map that is being drawn.
They say your enemy's enemy is your friend. Is that the foundation of the new defense bridge between India and America?
This is what separates us from others who claim to be telling you global stories that matter. In the last 3 days, WION has been traveling across Syria. You are in Latakia city right now. Tell us, what is the situation on ground? At Gravitas, we don't just tell you stories from selected countries from around the world.
2 years since the Myanmar military coup, the people of Myanmar continue to live in a nightmare.
Because it does not suit their propaganda, or because they are too scared to speak truth to power.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
Stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos and images. And the website for the latest news, views and analysis. WIONews.com. World is one.
A warm welcome to WION World as One, broadcasting from London this hour. You're with me, Katie Pilbeam. Let's get to the headlines. The first session of the Group of Seven Nations underway in Hiroshima. War in Ukraine, nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation at the top of the issues on the table. Ukrainian President Zelensky to join as leaders prepare to unveil new Russian sanctions. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to meet Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky in Hiroshima. It will be their first in-person interaction since the Russia-Ukraine conflict began last year. Relief for Imran Khan from the Pakistan Anti-Terrorism Court. Khan's interim pre-arrest bail has been extended till the 2nd of June in 3 terrorism-related cases. He's been asked to join investigations. Death toll due to cyclone Mocha in Myanmar now up to 185 according to the military junta. Relief and rescue operations continue amid massive devastation. Jamal Murray propels the Denver Nuggets to a come-from-behind win over the LeBron James Los Angeles Lakers to take a 2-0 lead in the Western Conference Finals of the NBA.
And the Denver Nuggets are 2 wins away from their first NBA Finals. Picked up either little clock.
A very good morning, and we go to our top story today. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be meeting Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky on the G7 summit, as you can see. Now, this marks their first in-person interaction between the two since the Russia-Ukraine conflict began last year. The two, they are expected to address the current situation in Ukraine and also explore avenues for further cooperation. The talks will likely focus on finding diplomatic solutions to de-escalate tensions and restore stability in the region. Well, for more on this, we're joined by our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibal, who's currently in Hiroshima for us. I believe hear me from Hiroshima today. Keep us up to date as to what's happening there.
Well, one of the big stories, especially for India-Ukraine relationship, will be the meeting between the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Ukrainian President Zelensky. Now, we know that this is their first meeting since the conflict began last year, and this is also the first visit of the Ukrainian President Zelensky to a region outside of the Western world. He is traveling to Japan to attend G7 summit at the invitation of the host, the Japanese Prime Minister Kishida, who in fact had visited Kyiv from New Delhi just earlier this year to extend the invitation. Now, what will transpire in the conversation between the two leaders is something that is not known, but we know the Indian position that both sides should sit together and resolve the conflict. And just last year, we saw the Indian Prime Minister meeting the Russian President Vladimir Putin and sending him a message that this is not an era of conflict, a message that has since then reverberated, with several foreign leaders also reiterating those words.
Siddharth, what are we hoping to get out of this G7 meeting? Because often there's a lot of rhetoric, a lot of talking and plenty of good intentions, of course. But what tangible outcome can we hope to get, do you think?
Well, when it comes to the outcome of the G7, the joint statement will be issued on Sunday, and we do expect a strong joint statement by the G7 leaders, especially when it comes to condemning Russia. Also mention of China is given as well, given how aggressive China has been in the region. But essentially, G7 speaks in one voice regarding the conflict, but the invited countries, many of which do not agree on that, many of which have been neutral, like India, like Indonesia, countries who have large population and keen to get cheap Russian energy. So what will be stance of New Delhi is something that is given, and it is also given that when it comes to the meeting between the Indian Prime Minister and the Ukrainian President, focus will be clear from the Indian side that there should be a resolution of the ongoing conflict. But from the Ukrainian side, they will be keen that India invites Ukraine to attend the G20 summit, which India is chair of.
Okay, Siddharth Sibal, thank you so much indeed. Our correspondent following the G7 proceedings there in Hiroshima for us here on WION World as One. Thank you. Well, the first plenary session of the day three G7 is underway there in Japan's Hiroshima. The Russia-Ukraine war and China's coercive economic politics dominates the agenda for the discussions. Well, the visuals of the inaugural plenary meetings, they're on your screen for you just now. The leaders of the G7 nations, Joe Biden of the United States, Rishi Sunak of the UK, Justin Trudeau of Canada, Olaf Scholz of Germany, Giorgia Meloni of Italy, and Emmanuel Macron of France, and Fumio Kishida, the Japanese host there. They held bilateral talks on Thursday evening and on Friday morning. Well, media reports also suggest that Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, is headed to Hiroshima himself and will meet with the G7 leaders. Well, before the first session gets underway, leaders of these nations visited Hiroshima, the Peace Memorial, and paid respects to victims of the atomic bomb tragedy in 1945. Well, at the memorial, they also got to meet the survivor of the atomic bomb that hit Hiroshima in 1945. The leaders, they also painted trees in the Peace Park there. Well, upping sanctions against Russia is one of the key agendas of the meeting. In this context, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced new sanctions on Russia's mineral and diamond sector. He said the step is aimed at making Russia pay for the price for its illegal activities. Russian diamond imports to the UK are among the items that will be banned by the British government. In 2021, Russia exported $4.7 billion worth in diamonds, making it the 8th largest exporter of diamonds in the world. Well, Russian aluminium, copper and nickel will also be banned by the British government under the new set of sanctions. Britain is also targeting an additional 86 people and companies from Putin's military industrial complex. The European Union imported around $1.5 billion worth of Russian diamonds in 2022. This is according to Europe's Statistic Office. In March 2023, both the US and UK said Russia earns billions of dollars from the diamond trade. Questions have arisen on what's been termed delayed action against Russia to curb the diamond trade. Well, many have asked why Russia was allowed to continue trading in diamonds, for 15 months after it invaded Ukraine, and who benefited from the continued diamond trade activity. Well, for more on this, we're joined by Mark Brolin, who is an economist and author. So thank you very much indeed for your time. So the Russian diamond industry was worth some $4 billion in 2021, astronomical. It's been over a year, as we know, since the invasion of Ukraine, but the sanctions on Russia, it's taken some time. Why do you think they weren't done earlier?
Well, I think it's because the UK is also, like many other countries, dependent on these minerals from Russia, and especially for industrial purposes. So I think that's why it has taken such a long time. The dependence might have gone down now since alternative routes have been found. But of course, it's also now the timing with the G7 summit is very important in this as well.
Okay, so you think maybe it's been done on purpose at this time to kind of make a point to the other G7 leaders? Because listening to what Rishi Sunak's already said, he's always saying, you know, Britain is leading the way, and he's hoping that others will do the same and follow suit.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is a good way to put pressure on other countries to do the same, and doing it only a couple of hours before the actual summit opens. Absolutely, this was a deliberate choice, timing-wise.
Okay, and there's another factor at play here as well. Let's maybe mention the Russian diamond lobby here in the UK, very powerful. How influential do you think it is in aspects like this, and how will they be able to maybe influence these sanctions, do you think? Is that relevant?
Well, it is relevant. I think every government has a lot more to do with lobbyists than they would like to admit. But I still think in this case there are bigger fish at stake. So perhaps the major issue here is more relating to keeping up the good relationship between Ukraine and Russia. This is a way also to give a black eye a bit to the EU. If UK still goes on to be a little bit ahead of the rest of the EU, it will play out well on the international scene, and perhaps especially so in Japan today.
Now, Russia is a resource-rich country. That's undoubtable. Do you think that these sanctions will make an impact to the country, given that they are so resource-rich?
Well, yes. I think especially now, perhaps not a year ago, but especially now when the Putin regime is already on its knees, everything counts. So it will. Yes, I do think it will make an impact, and not least symbolically, because now when we have noticed that the Putin enemies within his country are sort of circling, this will also, of course, they will take note of this, and they will draw strength from all the kind of opposition, and this is part of that game as well.
Okay, well, let's hope so. Thank you so much indeed for your time. That is Mark Brolin there, an economist and author here on WION World as well.
Pleasure.
Well, if you thought it was rising energy prices driving surging inflation levels in the UK, well, think again, because new findings suggest that escalating food prices are set to take over inflation indices. Well, a survey in the UK by Resolution Foundation says that rising food prices in the UK will soon overtake energy prices to drive inflationary trends. Well, this factor will affect the poorer households directly, and they will bear the brunt of the cost of living crisis. Well, the average person's grocery bill that had skyrocketed by 20% in the previous year, rising prices had hit industry. Now, rising food prices will hit middle and lower middle income groups. Now, in regular course, food prices in Britain fall in the summer as homegrown crops, they replace more expensive import. But factory gate prices, so we're talking about milk, meat and other food, have accelerated in some cases more than 50% on a year-on-year basis. So it's those staple products that people need. Now, according to the Resolution Foundation's report, Food for Thought, food prices, they are expected to contribute to around 2 percentage points to inflation each month. Now, on the brighter side of the equation, reports show that the annual rate of inflation fell in April by about 2 percentage points from the 10.1% figure for March. This drop, it is expected to be a relief for households and businesses which have faced intense financial pressure. But the pace of this decline in inflation percentage is expected to slow down as food prices, they are on the rise. Our correspondent Alex Isaac has sent us this report from London.
Now, a recent report by the Resolution Foundation think tank has worryingly shown that food prices are likely to continue to rise for some time. Now, it's going to be putting them on track to contribute more to overall inflation than energy bills. Now, annual bills have gone up over £1,000 in the last 3 years, but in March this year alone, food inflation was at a record high. And according to the think tank, it's poorer families that will suffer. They say that already 1 in 5 have been skipping meals and they're going for the cheapest options. So if prices rise, then they will be able to afford to eat less. And malnutrition is a really big problem as well. And that does come to other issues. There will be more going into hospitals and the government will then be paying out more as well. So it does seem like this is a vicious cycle. And also that this cost of living crisis that many are feeling, not just those from poorer or larger families, but across the board, it doesn't look like that is going to end anytime soon. This is Alex Isaac reporting from London for WION. World is One.
Rishi Sunak versus Boris Johnson in the UK continues. A plan to create the Great British Railways put forward by Boris Johnson has been scrapped by the Rishi Sunak government. Well, Johnson had proposed a solution to fix Britain's railway network. Now the Department of Transportation officials say it's not a priority for the government. Well, according to sources, the Transportation Department and Downing Street are in a tussle over the future of the project. Transport ministers want Parliament to allot time for discussions on the network. Rishi Sunak, however, does not consider the railways a priority. Well, the creation of the GBR was announced in May 2021 by Johnson and Grant Shapps. Then the Transport Secretary was his job. It was dubbed the biggest shake-up of the railways since privatisation in the mid-1990s. They said the GBR would be introduced to run the tracks and trains, including setting timetables and collecting fares through a simplified ticketing system. But now, railway sources say there is deafening silence over the new body. Mark Harper, the Transport Secretary, urged his formation in February 23. An announcement in March said it would be headquartered in Derby. But according to reports, officials are looking at a handful of rail reforms that could be achieved without a bill.
I'm introducing a bill that will give government the power to...
That's all from us here on WION World is One, broadcasting live from the British capital at this hour. You've been with me, Katie Pilbeam, but stay with the channel for more international headlines coming up for you shortly.
Gravitas tells you stories which others won't. And tonight we will tell you about this new strategic map that is being drawn.
They say your enemy's enemy is your friend. Is that the foundation of the new defense bridge between India and America?
This is what separates us from others who claim to be telling you global stories that matter. In the last 3 days, WION has been traveling across Syria. You are in Latakia city right now. Tell us, what is the situation on ground? At Gravitas, we don't just tell you stories from selected countries from around the world.
2 years since the Myanmar military coup, the people of Myanmar continue to live in a nightmare.
Because it does not suit their propaganda or because they are too scared to speak truth to power.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
Stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos and images. And the website for the latest news, views, and analysis. WIONews.com. World is one.
Gravitas tells you stories which others won't. And tonight we will tell you about this new strategic map that is being drawn.
They say your enemy's enemy is your friend. Is that the foundation of the new defense bridge between India and America?
This is what separates us from others who claim to be telling you global stories that matter. In the last 3 days, WION has been traveling across Syria. You are in Latakia city right now. Tell us, what is the situation on ground at Gravitas? We don't just tell you stories from selected countries from around the world.
2 years since the Myanmar military coup, the people of Myanmar continue to live in a nightmare.
Because it does not suit their propaganda or because they are too scared to speak truth